Hey, what's up? This is Václav. I made a couple of videos on energy management, and in them I use different kinds of diagrams to see what's going on. Starting from the Home Assistant standard out-of-the-box energy panel, also use the Grafana panels embedded in the Home Assistant dashboard, and a few custom cards, like my favorite Sankey diagram card. This could be used for other things than energy flows. For example, they use this card to show how people change their votes during the elections. They use it to illustrate the distribution of military resources during an invasion, for example. It's also a great tool to show the environmental impact of products throughout their life cycle. But energy is where it shines. After all, it's named after Captain Sankey, who used it to show energy efficiency of a steam engine. So let's dig in. Right, so out of the box, Home Assistant comes with this energy panel. I particularly like this energy distribution diagram, which shows the energy flows throughout the day. In this case, I selected the day. So it shows me how much energy I have produced in a solar panel, how much I exported, imported, charged and discharged the battery, and how much was used from the house. It is energy, so it shows in kilowatt hours. And the great thing about it is I can select if I want to see it for a week or for a day or for a specific period of time. And I also like this little detail that the color diagram around the house show me what percentage of the house consumption was produced from the solar and how much was imported from grid and what part of it was low carbon. So this is great. It shows me what's been happening today so far. If I would like to see what is going on right now at this very moment, I could look at the left side, which is showing me a chart by hour. There is the pure solar production, if I would like to see just that, and there are some statistics, and there are some individual devices. So from there, I could get an idea that the house has a large consumption because I have started to charge my electric vehicle. So this explains the high house consumption. So this is already good, but if I would like to get a little bit more detail of what's going on right now at this moment, in Hex there is a custom version of the card that I can configure to show the current power instead of the energy. So we can look at that. So this is the diagram. So it looks very similar, but I configured this not to show the kilowatt hours, so all the energy that has been produced today, but the power. So this is showing me what is going on right now. So currently the solar plant is producing 5.3 kilowatts. 3.8 out of it is used by the house, from which 2.4 is used to charge the electric vehicle, and then 1.5 kilowatt is used to charge the battery, and I'm exporting 62 watts to the grid. So that's good. I could put it on one of my dashboards to have an idea about what's going on right now. But there is another chart which I like even more, and that's a Sankey card. So let me show that to you. This is this type of chart, and it showed me the exact thing. It showed me that I'm currently producing 5.3 kilowatts by solar, out of which 2.4 is used by the CityGo and 1.5 is used to charge. But then it shows me all the other appliances, and what I like about it most is that the width of the individual flows is proportionate to the power. So I get pretty good idea about what's going on visually by just looking at that. Now for the history, I use Grafana charts, so you could see them here below. And I've already explained it in one of my previous videos, so I won't go into the detail. And if you'd like to see that, you can watch one of my previous videos. But what I'd like to do today is I would like to show you how you can get those charts. I can configure them. Specifically the Sankey card. So let's look at this one first. So to get a Sankey card, you need to first install it. It's available in the Hex, and here, by the way, I'm just seeing that the PowerFlow Card Plus is available for upgrade as well. So this is the card I was showing you earlier, the one that's very similar to the default energy flow card. So if you like that, you can grab this one as well. I'm gonna just update it. And then to install the Sankey card, go to the front end, go to Explore and Download Repositories and search for the Sankey card. In my case, I already have it installed, so it won't find it. So here it is. It's installed, including very nice documentation. Now to start with the Sankey diagram, it's quite useful to understand what it does, and that is it shows energy flows between those vertical sections. They're called sections, so that's what we'll need to configure. This one has 4. In my case, I use 3. And for each section you need to configure what entities, what sensors are out there. So in this case, this section has a solar, grid and battery and so on. And then for each of the entities, you have to configure to what entities in the next section the energy can flow, and these are called children. For example, they configured this chart to split the house consumption into different floors, and they said that the garage is used for the electric vehicle charger. So the flow from the garage is to the charger, 800 watts is used by some other appliances, and then there is remaining 3 watts used by something else. They also have this thing called autoconfig, which is explained down below, but we are not gonna get into that. And the other thing I like to point out is they allow to use the energy date selection. So if you build your own energy dashboard, there you can select the dates for the day or week or a month, and it will follow that. So it's pretty cool. I will try that in the future. Right now I'm using it for the power, but if you use it for the energy, you can do lots of other things. Also, they allow to subtract entities, which is pretty cool, because for example in this case, if you wanted to show the garage and the EV charger separately, you could have subtracted the EV charger from the garage, and you could have just shown this is the charger and this is the garage without the EV charger. So it'll be pretty cool as well. And they also have this one thing called remaining child state, which is going to automatically calculate what is remaining if you're not measuring energy for every single appliance. So very powerful. So let's get to it. Right, so I'm gonna go and edit this dashboard, and I'm gonna add one more. So once I've installed the Sankey card, I can say add card, and I will add Sankey card. And by default, the autoconfig is enabled, and it doesn't work for me right now, so I'm gonna disable it. And then I can just use this visual editor theoretically to add the first section. Now, this section editor has been added recently, and there's probably some bug with it, so when I press the add section, it doesn't work. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna go first to code editor and add the first section, and then I can go back to the visual editor and I can continue from there. So I have added my first section where I'm gonna have the sources of the energy. So it's gonna be PV power, then I'm gonna get battery discharge power, and then I'm gonna have the grid export. So this is where the energy can come from, and currently it doesn't show anything because at minimum I have to configure 2 sections. So let me add a second section, and in the second section I'm gonna add house consumption, then battery charge, and then grid export. So now I have added the entities to those 2 sections, but I still haven't configured the children. So I didn't configure where the energy can flow from the PV power and so on. So I'm gonna click on this edit icon, and I can say from here, the first chart will be the house consumption. Second one is gonna be the grid export. And the third one will be the battery charge. And I can continue like this, but what I'm gonna do is instead I'm gonna go to the visual editor, and which is gonna allow me to copy and paste. So I need to do that. So I need to add the entity ID in front of those, and then I can copy this children section to both of those. But I will not discharge the battery to charge the battery. That wouldn't make sense. And for the grid, the same thing. I can use it. In fact, this should be import, not the export. So I can import the energy and use it by the house. I can theoretically use it to charge the battery. And it's not gonna be today battery charge, but battery charge power. And I will not import the energy to export it. That wouldn't make sense. Now it should already show the diagram on the right side, and for some reason it doesn't, so I made some error. Looking at that, I have this error in here, and once I change that, it will update it, and I can see the chart here on the right side. And this is, by the way, the reason I like to edit it in the code editor, because, well, first of all, I can copy and paste. But also, I mean, the visual editor is nice, but sometimes it's hard to know that you're selecting the right thing. And if you make an error, in the visual editor is somehow hidden, and in here you see it right away, and you can fix that. Now, I like this also to show names, so for that I'm gonna add this line here, show names true, and now I can see PV power, import power, house consumption, and so on. If I would like to change the names, I could do that as well. So for example, in this battery charge, I could change that by doing so. And what I also like is I like to use different colors for different group of appliances. You can do it either from here, or we can go back to the visual editor and edit those individual sections in here. So you could see, for example, that I added the name in here, and I could change the color, I can change icon and whatnot. So this is pretty much how it's done. In my diagram, I edit another section with the appliances, and then I edit children in the house consumption with all of the appliances. So if I just exit this one and show you the configuration of my actual diagram, the first section is exactly the same. Second section is exactly the same except for the house consumption. You could see all the children configured in here. And then I have a third section with all the different children, and for each I have configured a color to group them somehow logically. So I like the Citigo to show red in all the charts because the car is red. And I use them, for example, for the TV and radio. I use this sort of bluish color and so on. And you've seen similar things on the chart in here. I like to have a certain consistency, so I could use this chart visually as well. If you look at the code editor, this is how it looks like. So there's those three sections, 1, 2, and then there is the third one in here. For the second section, I configured this pass-through, which means that this section in here, it doesn't say house. If I would delete that, it would say there is a house using 3.5. I could actually leave it there. I was experimenting with this before, so it just passes this through without showing how much it is. I can put it back. And that's all there is. Now you have also noticed I have those Grafana charts in here on my dashboard. So let me show you how I do that. So I have an Influx and Grafana installed, and I have created a couple of dashboards. One of them is power consumption, so this is probably the one you have seen on my earlier videos. And the way I've done it is I created those three charts in the middle that are showing the history of the individual power flows. So the first one is equivalent of the first and the second section of the Sankey card, if you will, because it's showing the photovoltaic battery and grid, but it's also showing the house consumption, the load. And the second chart is equivalent of the third section, if you will, because it's showing the individual appliances, but it's showing them in time. So you could see this is the car charging, which is dominating the consumption right now, obviously. And I also added a third chart showing the state of the charge for the battery. So we started on 26% and we're currently on 55%. And all around this, I put those gauges that are showing the individual power consumption of the individual parts in here, which I thought was a good idea, but then I think there are a little bit too much information. So I think the Sankey diagram is a better alternative to do that. So I don't use this anymore. So I created another dashboard, and this is this one, which is using just the middle section. Now the question is, how did I put this Grafana chart in my Home Assistant dashboard? And the way how it's done is there is this share dashboard button on top, and from there is a link, and I can just grab it. But before I do that, what I'd like to do is there is this lock time range button, and I like to turn it off, because if it's on, which is by default, it will add this from and to timestamps to the hyperlink. So then the dashboard will always use this chart in the time when I was creating the dashboard, and I don't like that. I like this to show always the current time, so I will turn this off, and I will then just say copy, and then I can go to my dashboard, and let me just create a new one at the end. And to make it easier, I will say this is gonna be a one card panel layout. So I'm gonna save that. And then I will say add a card, and I will say it's gonna be a web page. And in here, I'm going to paste this thing and say save. And now you could see that my Grafana dashboard is included in my Home Assistant dashboard. And it's cool. The only thing I don't like about this, it's I have now this Grafana navigation next to my Home Assistant navigation, and I don't like that very much. It's confusing. So let me do something different. Let me go to the Grafana chart again. And what I can do instead is I will not take the URL of the whole dashboard, but I will take the individual panels. So I'll go to this panel first, and then there's a share button. And then instead of link, I like to go to embed. And in the embed, I'm gonna actually turn off the time range again. And I'm gonna grab this source in here. So I'm gonna pick that. And then I'm gonna go back to my Home Assistant dashboard. I'm gonna edit that, and I'm gonna change the URL to include the panel. So this is great. The confusing navigation disappeared, but I have two issues with that. It's showing this one panel across the whole screen, which is great detail, perhaps too much of a detail. So because I have chosen the panel view type, I cannot add additional cards in it, so I'll change it back to masonry. So now I can add additional cards, so I can do that. So I'm gonna go back to Grafana. I'm gonna select the second one, embed. I'm gonna grab that. And now I can add another one. And I have two, so that's already better if this is what you want to do. But in my case, I wanted to do something in between, because I still wanted to have this navigation on top. So for example, if I zoom in this chart, I wanted this chart to zoom into the same time. So I wanted those two to be synchronized, not that as individual panels. So what I have used instead is I use something called playlist. So I can go to this dashboards, I can go to the playlists, and I can say I like to create a new playlist. I'll call it test. And in here I will select the dashboard that I like to show on the playlist. So I can have actually multiple ones, and they will change after a certain time. I can show different playlists in a sequence, but I like to only use one. So the power and consumption history, and they're gonna be changing every 5 minutes, but because there's gonna be only one, it's gonna remain the same. So I'm gonna save it. And now I will share this playlist. And there's different modes, and from there I will select the TV mode, and I will say autofit, and I will grab that. And now when I go to the dashboard and edit it, I can delete this one, and in here I can change the URL to the playlist, and it's showing me these dashboards with those three panels. But it's a little bit too small because I'm using this masonry layout, so let me change it back to the panel. And here we go. So now I have this those three panels, one under the other. I don't have this navigation on the left side, but I still have this navigation in here. So if I zoom in to this part in here, it will zoom all of them. So I can actually navigate. So if I like to see the beginning of the day, I can zoom in here, and it will zoom in all the panels like that. Now, if you would like to add those additional cards on the right side, you have a couple of options. In my case, I actually use a layout card where I use the grid layout, and I'm gonna show you how it's done in a second. But it's perhaps too complicated for many of you. So what I would recommend for this case actually is to use the sidebar, which is out of the box in Home Assistant. And if you do that, you will have this Grafana chart here on the left taking bigger part of the screen, and then you can add additional cards to the right like that. So for example, if you would like to use the Sankey card, we can just add it like this, and then we can move it to the right side using this button in here. So I think this is a great choice for this type of use. Now, if you'd like to get even more control, I actually use this layout card that is available from the hacks. So it's in here. layout card, and what it allows you to use, it adds other types of layouts, and specifically I use a grid layout, which allows me to control exactly how I want this card to behave. And I do that for pretty much one reason, and the reason is I like to have this header on top of my dashboards. In this particular one, I only have this back button, and I can probably do the same with using the sub view. But I use the kiosk mode on my dashboards, and I like to have this mushrooms chip card on top, which is showing different badges for different things. And I like this to stretch over the width of the whole window. And I wouldn't be able to do that in the sidebar. So I use this grid mode layout card, which is overkill for most of you. But in case you would like to know, let me show you how it's done. So the dashboard has a responsive layout with different cards of different sizes, and the way I configured them, I said I'd like to have this narrow left side, which is going to show the parameters and the control and all of those other optional information in here, and on the right side I like to have the Sankey card and then this Grafana dashboard under that. And if I would resize the window, when this becomes too small, what it'll do is it'll change the layout, so it will have those dashboards on top and the rest will come on the bottom. And if I keep resizing, it will switch to a single layout, which is what I use for the mobile phones. And the way how this is done is, if I go to the edit dashboard, it's using this grid from the layout card, and it's got this configuration in here, this template areas, so it splits the dashboard into different areas, where I say there is the header on top, and then there is those parameters on the left column and a control under that, and those optional ones under those. And on the right side I have this Sankey flow diagram, which is stretching across two columns. And then I have the history, which is stretching all the way down across two columns. And then there is a media query with two different breakpoints, one on 1000 pixels, which is going to have a 2-column layout, and then one on 700 pixels with a single column layout. So if you want to go extreme, you could do that. But my recommendation would be just to use the sidebar. And that's all there is. So initially, I was about to show you how to configure the Sankey custom card. But we also managed to integrate Grafana dashboard, panels, and a playlist in Home Assistant dashboard. And I even covered different view layouts, the sidebar view and the custom grid view in the custom layout card. Then we went a bit technical in web design with the cascading style sheets, grid template areas, and using media query to create a responsive layout. I guess that part was probably unnecessary, but I got carried away. Anyhow. Let me know if you liked it, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.